Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link for you can actually use down below to join the Zoom and be part of the conversation if you choose to. If you're here for the first time as an attendee and you're looking at all these panelists and you're wondering, how can I be a panelist? You're going to watch this. We're going to say things. You're not going to necessarily agree with all of them. You're going to think that we're crazy half the time. That's an invitation for you to come up and bring it on, argue with us, talk to us, share what you know. So if you're an attendee and you feel like you should be a panelist, you should. 6 o'clock is when we open the door. 6 o'clock to 6:30. We can't promise anything. We're just getting started. We're having our tea and our coffee, and it's just a kind of what we call the original hour. It's kind of us just hanging out. From between 6:30 and 6:40, we will distribute the Discord link. The Discord link is where over 700 of us keep talking about this because 3 hours a day isn't enough. And so we'll be doing that between 6:40 and 6:45. We start mic checks. Once we've started mic checks, the panel's closed. So if you want to be in the panel, if you have something that you want to share, you need to be ready with a good internet connection, good video connection, good audio connection, and be here by 6:40 in the morning. And then we'll bring you in, test you, make sure everything's working. And then we'll start at 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock is general question and answer. So if you are, we'll keep on posting if you're here in the webinar chat. Folks can post that into the Zoom webinar chat. We use a different question and answer system than our webinar. So than this webinar. So the link, we'll post the link again into there. And you can then ask questions, vote questions up and down, and then we'll manage those. So it's general questions, anything you have about media development from 7 to 8. At 8 o'clock, we usually have a specific subject that we're going to talk about for another hour. So then the questions are specific to that. Today, we're going to have Shaun and James and Matt from AWS are going to join us. And we're going to talk a little bit about AWS, answer your questions. So if you have questions about AWS specifically, and you start asking them this hour, our request is that you do AWS : and then whatever the question is. That way we know that we should keep that for the second hour. So AWS : is what you want to do there for the second hour. If you're asking questions about AWS and how it works, put those in there. And then the rest of the week, we've got a pretty good schedule here. Tuesday, tomorrow, a lot of us are using audio hijack and loop back, and we decided we're going to spend an hour talking about it. So how we use it, what works, what doesn't work. So anyway, so we're going to do that on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to talk general about cameras. So general Q&A, cameras and video, all questions related to those things specifically on Wednesday. On Thursday, we have Luria Petrucci. I'm so used to, I knew her as Callie Lewis a long time ago, and I realized that Petrucci. Yeah. I realized I've never said, I know her as Loria and I know her as Callie Lewis, but I was like, I never said her last name until I saw it there. Anyway, so Loria is going to join us. She's from Livestream Pros, and she was in Geek Brief before that, and she's going to talk about how she got here and talk about her approach to live streaming. And so she's going to be here on Thursday. Friday and Saturday are both education hours. So the second hour on Friday is all dedicated to educators. Saturday, all morning, dedicated to educators after the first 2 hours of general Q&A. And then Sunday is just general Q&A. So anyway, so that's the basics of it. And remember that if you are here in the regular Zoom chat, we're putting the link in regularly to push you to the new Q&A system that we're using. Also, if you're in the new Q&A system today, you may notice that there's a little note that's up in the upper left. If you click on that, you can actually just listen to the show without watching it. so that's we're testing it, but we're streaming live into the Q&A app. So if you please test it and let us know what you think. Anyway, Chris, let's go ahead and get started. Remember, the last thing I just want to say before this is that as attendees, it is your responsibility to ask questions and vote on questions. We don't have a show without you. So ask questions and vote on those questions, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, Chris.
Good morning, Alex. I would like to wedge a personal question in. I noticed, I heard the other day you were requesting help on the I Need Help channel on the Discord.
Yes.
And I just want to, actually, it's not a question. If you ever see that, join in. I actually helped out once, and it was very interesting. If you have the time, I don't know if you can talk about what were you testing? Can you? I know you can't
Yeah,
tell what you were testing for, but what were you testing?
we had one virtual system that needs to split into three. so there's three different virtual event systems that we had to break everything into that are all getting built out right now. And so we needed to test every time we rewire something. We want to try to get everybody involved and get people talking back and forth. In this case, it was taking the original system and making it ready to go for some rehearsals that we have this week. And so it wasn't anything new except for that, it's a Skype, all Skype connections over Macs. But there's comms all driven into it so that we can talk to each person. And so there's a lot of audio pipelines and video pipelines and getting it all working. There's another system that's a full Zoom system that is ISOs for Zoom. So we'll have other invitations for you guys over the next week or two as we get that one up. Then there's the vMix one that we're testing. So there's a whole bunch of things that are all kind of splitting up as we continue to expand. We just have a lot of work coming in right now. So we're trying to manage the flow. So
Alex,
so
what
anyway,
part of the Discord does that live in?
I just put it into I need help. I just need so usually you get to just see the kind of the inside or from the participant side what we're doing and like see how we're testing stuff. It's just and we really appreciate it when people jump on for a minute and talk to each other. Obviously, what we do a lot of is virtual events where everyone's talking to each other, and so we need to because there's one of our systems is all of the systems also, in addition to having to split them up, we had to make them COVID ready, which means every person that runs the system is getting split up into different rooms in the building. So everybody has their own little pod. So instead of having everybody in a room with masks and everything else, we literally have a room for each person, and each person has their own microwave and refrigerator and a couch and everything else that they need to operate completely independently of the building, other than their little pod there. We're in a situation where the amount of work that we have and the level of work that we have is it would be really a problem if everybody got it. If one person got something, we'd find a way to manage it. But if everybody got sick, it would be bad. So anyway, so we're fortunately we're in a room that has a building 3210 that has tons of ways to wire, run cables to every room. It's all built into the system because it used to be the old Industrial Light and Magic stage. So it's got lots of places to go. So anyway, so that's what the tests are for. So you'll see little back and forth. There'll be lots of tests that we're doing over the next month as we prep for a couple shows. If you're interested, it'll be great to see you guys I would put it together.
I would totally recommend dropping in if you see those requests, but also it's a great function of this group to have a lot of, smart people that have good input, when you can ask them about stuff. Anyway,
it's super useful for us because it's not like just adding random people. It's like people who can technically say, well, this isn't working, or I'm hearing this little thing, or I'm doing, it's a really,
but how does it sound, Mom? Can you tell me how it sounds?
Exactly.
It sounds bad.
Exactly. All right, let's go. Not your brother, but Bob Lindsay with an E says, given the ATEM Mini Pro ISO will produce DaVinci Resolve project files, is it possible to fully import these into Final Cut Pro and do edits there? Would you recommend this approach or stick with DaVinci Resolve?
I think it'd be fine to use Final Cut. You just need to move the files. I mean, it's building a project file. It's still recording H.264 files that you can just bring into Final Cut. So it's all set up for you in DaVinci. They're making it easy, and that's a great way to use the fact that you have this integrated experience. So I think that's pretty cool.
I've never received an XML from DaVinci and tried it. I'm sure there's a way to do it if it's any sort of standard. I'd be willing to test if somebody wants to send me a couple files in an XML.
Yeah, so I think it would work. I will say that the old-fashioned editor in me would still conform all the files to Apple ProRes before I started editing. so I would just be like, okay, we're going to turn these all into Apple ProRes, and then we'll edit them. And that has to do with the keyframing and so on and so forth over H.264. Bill, and then Chris, and then Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of the same thing. Most of us who are Final Cut 10 editors have a workflow that is very important to us. And one of the first steps is before anything gets on a storyline, we want to do our metadata manipulation. So regardless of if they had a translator, it would have to be pretty good before I would not just bring in the raw files and process them to my standards.
Because it should be, I mean, they should, I don't know if they're going to be frame for frame, but they should be pretty close to frame for frame. So it shouldn't, building a multicam file with that should not be a challenge. Go ahead, Chris, and then Jason.
I was going to say one of the things that Grant mentioned was that in that BlackMagic ecosystem, that although the H.264 files coming right out of the ISO, you know, auto record, you know, whatever. But if you set up the cameras to record, it seems like the ISO files are actually like your proxies. And if you want to get your files to somebody remotely quickly so they can start editing something and then ship them the high-res files,
yep,
that's a good workflow.
Yep. Jason?
Sorry, the important part to know there, well, first, for XML, I haven't done it in about 6 months. And I mean, yeah, it can get a little bit weird. The important thing here, though, with the ISO is that everything is going to be gen locked. If you're using the H.264 file, your time code is going to be uniform. So even if Final Cut doesn't translate your XML or your cuts perfectly for any reason, you're still going to have perfectly aligned files, which is really, really important.
And I'll be honest with you, cutting a show live is important because otherwise the editor isn't paying attention to what all the cameras are doing. You can end up in kind of, you can end up in a situation where none of the cameras had a good shot. So cutting the show is important because you can sit there and be calling the cameras and or knowing that you have good camera shots and paying attention to that. The actual edit that you make with your live show, generally we just throw away. We use it as a way to, as a guide, and you can keep it if you want and use it as some kind of reference or whatever. But if you're going to actually edit this in post, you're going to find that your ability to multicam, if you have any time at all. Now, if you're trying to do some kind of really fast turn, it might make sense. But generally, that edit is junk compared to the multicam that you're going to do in Final Cut or DaVinci. So the one thing that we see people go down a bad path is when they try to fix the live edit, you know, because there's a variety of tools that will grab an ATEM edit and build an EDL, and then you can, you know, go from there. Trying to fix that edit is really not a great experience, as opposed to just going through and just doing another multicam really fast. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, one more thing is that traditionally FCP XML and Resolve's ability to parse XML has been the tightest integration of really any of the two NLEs that I've seen. So I think your chances are much better in that system than anything else.
Next question.
Paul says, gotta hit the answer button. How would you embed a Zoom session onto a web page? Good question.
There are some APIs that will let you do it, and I don't know the API route that well. I mean, the easiest way to do a Zoom to put a Zoom session on is to stream it to YouTube and then embed the YouTube, you know, into the page. That's what we're going to be doing soon. So that's the easiest way to do it. But there are API solutions to put that window in. I don't think you get all the same controls. Go ahead, Colin.
You do get the option to embed the entirety of the interface. You do not get the option to change the interface in any way. So that's the frustration. The APIs are primarily designed for scheduling and management of launching meetings rather than in-meeting rearrangement and so on. So yes, I would go with the I would put it to whatever your target CDN is, assuming you don't need that level of interaction.
Yep. Next question.
Follow up from Bob Lindsay, not your brother. Do the panel use macros with the ATEM Mini or Mini Pro switchers? If so, what are the typical use cases?
Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, but keep in mind the ATEM Mini Pro. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a control surface, pretty much anything that you would want to do in rapid succession or basically identically, you know, if you're switching into and out of the key while you're doing something, meaning you want to appear like you have more than one key, you absolutely want to use a macro. And at the end of the day, I just kind of end up programming everything. And that's even without the ATEM Mini Pro. The nice part is the interoperability.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is anything you want, any complex action that you want to do, that's where you kind of stack that all up. So we do a lot of it on the larger switchers. We do a lot of it for super sources. We've got a bunch of different super sources that we want to use. You push a button and you have what you need so that you can keep on changing that. That'd be, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
If you have 4 cameras into an ATEM Mini and then 4 lower thirds in the media pool, can you write 4 macros that cut between the 4?
Absolutely.
With the 4, yeah, with the lower thirds chasing the camera.
Yep.
Cool.
Next question.
Our own Mickey says, our friend Tucker once mentioned on Discord that the color purple is tougher on compression. Can the panel expound on this?
I don't know about purple. It could be. Red is a disaster. Well, any pure color is really rough, but red is the one that we see the most. I always feel bad for. We've had clients that have red logos, and I was red in the logo for 090, and it gets beat up pretty badly because of the H.264. Now H.265, I haven't tested against it, but I can tell you H.264 just annihilates red, and it has to do with the way it decides what's important as it relates to luminance. So you end up with a lot of aliasing because the information that's being that's holding that pure color, and it's the pure colors. It's not just red. It's red, blue, and green. Those colors are in the YUV space, and so without a lot of, they don't have very much as they're being subtracted from the luminance. They don't have as much data there. So what happens is that you just end up with this big stair stepping because it's basically 1/4 res. So when it's a quarter of the resolution of your image is what your pure colors are going to be. So so your reds tend to get beat up as well as your blues and greens, but reds are the ones that we notice the most because they're used often as pure colors. Go ahead, Bill, and then Jeffrey, and then Chris.
So in classic systems, when we were transitioning into digital video from analog, a lot of the systems used more of the green channel bandwidth for color accuracy. So I think a lot of us got conditioned to look to green first. Blue was the secondary. And as you get into some of the other colors, that old instability, I think, stays with us. I'm not sure it's entirely digitally correct now, but I know that's why I always look to green first. I look to blue second, and anything else is if I can't use the other ones, I use that.
Yeah, and just these less saturated or more mixed colors will generally look better on a compression. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I don't know. I've got purple behind me. How do I look? Do I look compressed or?
I don't think it's purple. I mean, it could be a more bright purple that has more red in it. could as it gets closer to that, I could be it, but I don't.
Like Victor, yeah.
But yeah, I don't see it as much there either. But reds we notice a lot. Put a red logo into a stream just as a test, and you'll see what I'm saying. Chris?
So if you were doing a show announcing the merger of Oracle, TD Ameritrade, and Hewlett Packard, how would you make all those logos look better?
You can't.
Wow.
I mean, you can't. There's no way to fix it. Because the way to fix it.
Do you like the fact that I at least got them in order: red, green, and blue?
Yeah, there we go. You can desaturate them, but then their art director goes crazy. So I mean, desaturating them is the way to fix it. And if you can get away, like when I'm designing stuff that isn't connected to a lookbook, then I can desaturate it and fix it. But if it's a really sad, like Verizon would be a good example of something that I've had a lot of experience with, and it is, the logo just falls apart every single time. Anyway, next question.
All right, Alex. Courtney says, Alex, actually Courtney would sound like this. Alex, have you? No, I can't do it. Made any progress on your 3D printed COVID mask with DPA mic embedded for comms? I have a sample work in progress of one of mine I can show.
Please show it.
Show your mask, Alex.
I don't have one yet.
I found this. I've been printing these 3D masks since February. This is the USC Keck School of Medicine design. It's available. I'll post the link in the chat in a few minutes. And the neat thing about this, it's easy to modify. I have the pile in here because this has 2 filters, one on the inside and one on the outside, and I just cut a slot with so that you don't have to modify the 3D model at all. Just cut a slot right in the edge here, filled it in with a little silicone, stuck the pile and wedged the pile in there and cut a slot in the cover so that that pile is now sitting between two HEPA filters. And let's see if I can turn it up and we can listen to it. Okay, this should be the pile. Tell me if you can hear it.
We can.
It may make me sound a little bit like Darth Vader because you have that mask sound effect, so.
No, it's actually just a few decibels down. It's not
Really?
bad.
Well, I can bring the level up, but it also, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
I was about to say you get a built-in pop filter there, which is pretty
It's
cool.
a HEPA / pop filter.
Yeah, and it prevents wind noise from the outside because it's between two HEPA filters and not touching either one, and prevents pops from the inside.
And a little EQ and it'd be good to go.
Yeah, yeah. So
fire up the maker community.
It might work.
No, I don't have it right in front of me that I can go grab. Andrew Mazeppa suggested a singer's mask, which looks like a big duck bill, and I love it. It's a little too far out. It does look like a duck bill, and I saw Fenwick.
Ridiculous,
but it sounds so good. Like
this
so,
good
as long as it's not angled down like a plague doctor mask, you're probably fine.
No, so it comes out.
It
gives you a lot of space in front of you, and there, Chris Fenwick has a great one there. So the but the there you go. There's
that's just wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I've been buying different ones, trying to figure it out, and I think that the singer's mask is as close to the one. Now, what I did that I can't show because it's on my phone is I took a Bellus 3D and I scanned my face, and then they have a mask that they are automatically will give you an STL file from, but it just exports the STL file. So now I'm fiddling with it in my copious free time. It's been a little busy over the last couple of weeks. So to take that mask, it already gave me the contours of my face, so it's custom to it. And then I'm trying to kind of build it out, but using these other masks to kind of figure out what makes the most sense to get all this stuff working. It went a little on the back burner when we decided that we were going to separate everybody into their own rooms. And I was like, well, now we don't, it's not as, it was really pressing for a little while. And then we were like, and everyone's going to be in their own room, so we don't have to think about it as much because it's only in the hallways that we need to worry about it. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Question, because they've been starting to ban masks with events on it. Would that be considered having a vent on your mask there?
The one that's
no, there's no. It's sealed
not
up.
The HEPA filter.
There's HEPA filters on both. There's double HEPA filter, and it's a. This is a respirator style. So I put some surgical tubing around the edge, so it's a tight seal against. This is how it sounds if you're talking through it, but and the mic's down, but. No, it doesn't have a one-way valve on it, which is the one that they're banning, the N95 with the valve on it. Those are the ones that are banned in many places.
And pretty much anything that doesn't have two little filters, no one's going to, people are not going to know what to do with it.
Right. And
so
the
you can
HEPA
think about
filters are easily replaceable in this one. You can just pop them out. And I stick them under a UVC light to sterilize them.
That's great. That's great.
Well, I got a question. What about the HEPA filter? What is the microns that it's preventing? Are you really preventing anything?
Yeah, it's I got an air conditioner filter that's rated to filter out viruses. I forget. I think it's a 13 or a 16 that you can get and tear it apart and then take the. It's a hot blown polyester filter that.
So HEPA filter standard is 0.3 microns, but I mean that doesn't really matter. It is effective, absolutely, if you double it.
All right, next
right.
question.
It's much more effective than almost most of the masks out there.
That's great.
Larry Jacobson says, for photography, I use a shot with an 18% gray card to match color temperatures. For video, I use a color chart with each camera. Is there an equivalent way to measure color temperature for live video cameras?
Exactly the same way you're doing it now.
I would say, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's just a video stream coming out of any camera. So as long as you throw it through a vector scope and or waveform monitor, you'll get the same readings.
Yeah, you should, I mean, pointing at a gray card or a white card, you should get readings that are what the camera thinks it is. I mean, I have to admit that we don't use the white auto white balance or the camera settings very often. Usually we're putting it up against the scope and make a decision about what we want it to look like. Go ahead, Victor.
Just a new question around this. Single man shop, I'm trying to do that with a white card or whatever. Do I just simply put it on a stick and put it where my head would be? Or, how do I do that? Because I can't do both things at once.
Yeah. Put it on a mic stand. Put the chart where your face would be.
Yeah, and that's the key. You want it. People often have a lit area, and they will somehow bring the white card closer to the camera to get it to fill the frame, but that takes it out of the light that you're actually trying to match. So keep it where your person is going to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the bottom line is just remember, as you're setting it, especially for yourself, and you're not matching a bunch of cameras, just remember that the most important thing is that it looks good when it comes out. So you want to try to put it out somewhere and take a look at it, and then make those adjustments. A lot of times, I've decided this is the way I want mine to look, and so for better or for worse. But the way I did that was I have the camera running through the switcher, and I sit there with the ATEM open, and I moved my color wheel around until I was happy with it. I just kept moving things around until I was like, okay, well, that's the color I want, for this. So remember that the creative level of the ATEMs specifically is very high. And so you open up the ATEM interface, you look at it, and we can get caught up in the numbers. This is more of the way Bill would approach it, right? You can get caught up with all the numbers, but the bottom line is, does it look good, or does it look the way you want it to look? And so don't get too worried about those things, and worry more about putting it out to a screen that streaming it to Facebook. Look at your iPhone, make sure that your iPhone doesn't have any of the nighttime goofiness and everything else. Look at it on the iPhone and say, do I like that? And then just keep changing it. And you have these nice little color wheels that you can kind of play with it all, and just spend some time with it. There's not as much of a technique as just like, do I like the look?
So as a follow-up to that, because you hit exactly on the nail, again, I'm a noob, admittedly, and it's frustrating because I'll look at the scopes and I'll have the ATEM and I'm getting things the way I want them to be. And then I do a test recording, a little Zoom test recording for myself, and play that back. And you're right, I don't like it. Or if I think I'll like it, people in the chat are like, well, you're red, you're blue, you're green, what a Martian. And so it's like, it has been the most frustrating thing to learn how to get my skin tone balance that we've done in this entire 3 months of doing this show for me. And you still haven't done the scope show, by the way.
All right. Okay. Scopes coming. Scopes are coming. And we'll just do a general scopes discussion soon, rather than, I was trying to get someone to really talk about scopes, but I am.
No, we need an engineer. We'll bring an engineer in, somebody that really knows it.
Well, it's just fine. It's just, we will have an introduction to it that I think is probably enough to get people off on the field. And then I'm talking to, it's just a matter of scheduling some other folks that build the hardware. So it's just, so we'll work on that. All right.
And of course, I think
an hour of talking about it to prep us, so that when we're ready, we ask the right questions of the engineer.
And then a day of working with it, at least a day.
I agree.
Yep. And all right. Next question.
Christian Ortiz says, did Bob or someone from BlackMagic ever answer about why no 120 frames per second with the newer cameras? Alex, you mentioned 24, 30, 60, easily divisible.
I forgot. I was going to ask him. I forgot to ask him. I just didn't put it in the system, and I should have. And we got to the end of the hour, and I had forgotten to ask him. So we haven't.
Failure.
Again, I know it was. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, there's that. Next question.
Jeffrey Reyes says, Alex, what are your thoughts on drones?
I love them. I love drones. I knew that it was what was going to happen, which was that eventually they were going to take all the fun out of it, which they've taken most of the fun out of it now. So I got into it not as early as some, but pretty early on, and got to wreck a lot of drones. I lost a couple I had a 3D robotics one that just went up and never came down. Like, it just took off and it just disappeared. Like, it never came back. I had to fight with it a little bit every once in a while. Like, it would want to go one direction, and I would want to go another. And then one day it won and just went off. And unfortunately, at the time, I was living in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of really open farmland and sanctuaries and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure no one got hurt, but it would have shown up in the news, of course. So, but I had DJIs that I wrecked, and then I had other ones that I wrecked, and I wrecked a lot of drones. overall, I think that they're super exciting. You just get to see a whole different world that you don't get to see otherwise. And I love playing with them.
Same world.
The hard part is dealing with, I live right next to an airport. So I have to, every time I take off, I have to give DJI my cell phone number. and promise that I won't go up over a certain height and everything else. Because in the early days, like a lot of my stuff was at 1,500, 2,000 feet, and you're not allowed to do that anymore. So that's the issue. But otherwise, I think they're kind of amazing, and they're an incredible amount of fun, and it's a really good skill set to have, I think. Jason, and then Bill, and then George.
So trying to teach journalists like how to use drones at NAB in 2014, I could tell you, it is one of the strangest things. And if my advice on drones is, if you're trying to use them in production, hire a professional. There are so many things that make it not a camera that is flying. It is not that simple. It simply is not. But oh yeah, and by the way, Alex, the 3DRs were absolutely awful. They were one of the industry worst, like in the history of the industry. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Bill.
I don't think we've ever had a technology that has more both end potential. The possibility for good from these is immense. You can imagine flying a medicine to somebody in a remote area who otherwise wouldn't be able to get it fast, and it's saving their life. On the other hand, we've seen examples of people throwing them around apartment complexes to peep through windows. It is going to be a tough time, I think, shaking out how people interface with their drones and getting the idea of being responsible and use them for the best of their uses, because the upside is huge, as is the downside.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
So I sold all my drones because I'm in DC, so I step out the back door and fire that thing up. As soon as it goes up, it comes down to the ground. I would say the best thing to do is I have a good friend, Louisa Winters, who's a certified pilot and drone pilot. Latch on to folks that are actually certified, if you're going to treat it as a business also, and hire them on because they've got all the certifications.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely hire license. I mean, we won't touch, if it's a production, we won't touch it. From an insurability perspective, we won't touch anything that isn't someone who's got all the licenses and all the paperwork and all the other things, and they've got tons of experience and recommendations, and and they're really good at it, and so you want to have those types of people in your group. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, it's actually illegal here to fly any kind of drone without a license.
Yeah, the good ones are the little ones now that the DJI made sit in the United States just under the legal limit, and so you can have a lot more fun with those ones because you don't have to have so many all the rules. But they're smaller, but they're kind of amazing. Go ahead, John.
Well, people have been talking about drones in the air. Drones underwater are great fun too, and you don't have to worry about the FAA.
So much fun. We've used a couple of those, and we had one for a while. And I would actually say that underwater drones are more interesting than in the air drones. Because there's so much more there. We took one off of the in Monterey and wandered off into the wandered a couple hundred feet in, and it's just unbelievable, like what you see. Just all the life and the fish and all the other things, and so it's pretty cool. It's cabled, it's not it's not wireless, but it's still really cool. Go ahead, Jason.
By the way, Alex, I could be wrong about this, but it's always been illegal to get up to 1,500 feet, like pilot, obvious, like no matter. I can tell you, it's 400 feet AGL, no matter what.
Probably. The reason I was doing it specifically was I was mapping my family's golf course. So it was the 400 feet took too many photos, and so I mapped it up higher.
Too much work.
Yeah. I was like, let's just get this done. So anyway, it was a long time ago, 3 or 4 years ago that I did that. So anyway, all right, next question.
In drone life, 4 years ago is not that long ago. Anyway, Paul Wallace says, I'm not getting my multi-view output on an external monitor connected to the ATEM Mini Pro. What are the troubleshooting steps to go through to fix this?
My guess is that, do you know what frame rate you're set to in your ATEM Mini?
I think I'm set to 29.6.6.
or 29.9 or 29.7?
29. Yeah. That's what
976.
I'm set to, yeah.
Or 9, no, 29.9. Anyway, so the I got into the 23.979. Anyway, so
This show just went off
29.97.
the rails over
Yeah,
frame
exactly.
rates.
So if it's set to that, it should work. What we oftentimes see with monitors that aren't showing up is that your switcher set to 50 or to 23.98, and it can't, the monitor can't handle it. Jason and then Jeffrey.
So two things. First, update your update your firmware. Second, if you have monitors set to auto, it will conform automatically to the frame rate of the first input. But more importantly, if you're not using a professional monitor for the output and you're using the older firmware, you will absolutely have that problem because you're not going to get a rounded frame rate. It'll show up as drop frame, and unless you're using like a BlackMagic or a broadcast monitor, that'll just cut it.
And we've got a lot of
I'm
questions.
using a Samsung smart TV.
That is not a broadcast monitor. So yes, you will have that problem.
And just so you know, we have a lot of questions this morning. So two things. One is if you're an attendee, vote on the questions because we may not get to all of them. And two, if you're a panelist, try to keep all answers to 15 seconds because we're going to have to move really fast to get through these questions. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Jeffrey, and then Guy.
Yeah, Paul, are you getting any picture at all, or just blank?
I'm not getting a picture at all. I tried six different cables. None of them worked. So it's not a cable issue. And
I try another monitor too.
I'll try another monitor. I'll hook it up to.
Yeah, that was my suggestion. Try another monitor.
Try to check the variables there. Now go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, on the software control panel under output, let me see if I can get up there. You should have one that says multiview. I'm just on the regular one, but you got to change this from output camera 1, 2, 3, or 4 to multiview, and that's it.
Yeah, so I did that.
You did that, and it's not working still?
No.
Oh wow, that's wild.
Man, I'm batting my head against the wall on this one, but I'll try another TV.
Yeah, try a couple of them. Try all of them. Yeah. All right, next question.
And make sure it's not attached to your microphone mute also. Yep. Brett Ramsey says, with Melbourne now in total lockdown, including most businesses for at least 6 weeks, and BlackMagic based in Melbourne, has anyone heard anything about further major delays on BlackMagic products? Good question.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I think they manufacture in Singapore, so I don't know if production would be affected by what's happening in Melbourne.
I believe that's correct. So I think that most of the manufacturing is in another country, which is still slowed down because of the rules in Singapore, but I don't think they're affected by anything that's happening in Melbourne as far as production. I think there are some things that are getting built there, but not the things that we're trying to get. All right, next question.
Next question would be from Hasmuk. Backdrops ordered Lastolite collapsible background mid-gray. Delivery in September using paper-based backdrop yesterday on stand kit. Too many crinkles and folds that show up on video. Great wall behind my setup. Thinking of just painting the wall. Any downsides to this?
If you're happy with a gray wall, go for it. It's always going to be better. Like it's always going to be better to paint the wall. I just moved into a new office in the space, and I'm going to paint the wall. It's way easier for me than putting up a pop-up. I'm having a pop-up here because my wife won't let me paint the wall gray. So that's the only reason I have it. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Jeffrey.
What color gray are you going to paint it?
18%.
What color gray?
18% gray. It has much less to do with 18% gray and more that I don't have to think about it. I just take a gray card and I hand it to the painter and I say I want it to look just like that. And then I've just done that for the last 20 years. So I don't have to. I have the same gray all the time. And again, I don't think there's no scientific backing other than it's easy for me to provide reference to a painter. Bill, and then Jeffrey, and then Jason. 15.
18% gray has been a standard in video backgrounds for a long time. It's not white. It comes back from white a little bit. I will say that the variable in most people's houses is how much light you can control or can't control. In a TV studio, you have complete control over light and darkness. So 18% gray is a beautiful base. But if you have a big glass window in your living room, you may get a lot of light level and you may want to bring down your gray, but that gets into the weeds.
Yep. Go, Jeffrey.
Scuffs, you have to worry about scuffs, and then of course the issue of you need to use a flat paint rather than a glossy paint, so it doesn't reflect back.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey. And then Jason.
Yeah, that was what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. A matte paint would work better for us than a glossy one.
Yep. Jason.
So I have this in my wallet always. This is a tiny little version of the YBAL card. My question is there ever not 18%? I don't understand why this is always something people talk about. Like, to me, it's 18% because that's how you do gray cards.
Well, it's how you do gray cards for Caucasians. That's why 18% is like it was created in at a time when that's what they were, it's a certain level for Caucasian skin, which is why it's a little bit people are rethinking it as far as what those colors go. If you expose it with certain levels that you think are going to work for Caucasians, it doesn't necessarily work for other complexions. And so I don't necessarily use it for cameras, but I use it as the background because it just works as it's a relatively good gray for me to throw in there. And again, it has nothing to do with anything other than I don't have to think about it. All right, next question.
Saimat Sand here says, is there a way of automatically downloading or moving Zoom cloud recordings directly into OneDrive/Google Drive, etc.? We have close to 70 gigabytes of recordings of training sessions, need to empty Zoom space for more recordings each month.
I'm sure that there's an API to do that, an API call to do that. I don't think there's any other way to do it. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm 95% certain there's some way that someone could write some code that every day would just go and grab what's there and put it somewhere else. And if I were, I would try to find Grant and so ask him if there's an API there to fix that. Jason?
In the past, I've done it with AppleScript just for like a quick and dirty way to do it, and just have your Mac down it and then up it. If you're looking for a way to not have to bring it up and down because of bandwidth constraints, good luck.
Jeff, you were going to say something?
That was the same thing. I was going to say exactly what we did is we just downloaded it directly from the software off their website and then took it to Google Drive directly because my drive syncs automatically to Google Drive anyway.
That's perfect. John?
I'll put the link in the chat. There are a number of services that do it at our university. As soon as a Zoom call is done, it goes up to the cloud and then it's downloaded to our university cloud. Got a frog in my throat. Sorry.
Nope, that's great. Thank you. All right, next question.
A. Barrera says, my church started doing prayers using Zoom, and I purchased the $14.99 account for 100 participants. How can I link or broadcast the church prayer on my YouTube account so I can get more participants to watch?
You should have a setting at the bottom of your advanced settings that lets you enable streaming. If you have a pro account, you should be able to do that. And then you can have YouTube, Facebook, or Easy, and then you just have to turn on RTMP if you want to send it to something like Restream or to something else. But that's all. It's in the settings inside of Zoom, and it's at the bottom. So and you have to turn it on. And then once you turn it on, you should see an option as the host. Only the host will see it. To go live, it's an API connection to YouTube, and it will ask actually for, and I don't know how it works for meetings, for webinars, it will ask for a URL. And the reason I found out later, the reason it's asking for the URL is because if the webinar gets over, if too many people come into the webinar, it'll automatically push them to the URL. But we've had some issues with that using the RTMP, but no issues using just Zoom. I'm just using a straight to YouTube using the API. Next question.
Philip Tesoro says, I have an old Sony RM-BR300 remote control unit for controlling multiple PTZ cameras. Would anybody know if it's possible to reprogram these? And if so, what programming language I would need to learn or brush up on in order to do so?
Jeff?
Visca over RS-232. It is a fun job.
Hashtag sarcasm.
Sell it quick.
I wouldn't try to go down that path. Time is worth something, and that will be a lot. All right, next question.
Alton Christensen says, other than being pricey, does anyone have any recent experience with OpenReel, stability, support, usability, etc.?
Go ahead, Chris.
I would talk to Ben Consoli, the Go Creative show in Boston, based in the Boston area. He uses it. He loves it. Saved his business.
I think that if you have a business model for it, it probably is a great solution.
He really loves it.
Next question.
Kevin says, any recommendation on a RAID system?
Jason, Jeff.
I mean, we've covered this before. I personally have a couple of Drobo units, and it's a love-hate relationship. I feel like the company, after it got sold, got a little bit goofy. Since then, I'm blanking on the name of the company, but my next RAID will not be a Drobo. Let me put it that way.
It depends on what you're talking about. RAIDs. Do you need a NAS, a SAN? I mean, there's a lot of different variations of RAIDs. If you just need a RAID to edit on, then you just need just a bunch of drives put together. You could do it with software, or if you wanted a controller card also. 45 drives is one that we recently came across, and I believe our friend Doug here actually has got his in place now, and it's pretty amazing price point and capabilities and everything in it.
Good. Victor, and then Bill, real quick.
So OWC, maxsales.com would be one place I would definitely look for that. And also Promise, if you're going to go to the next level as far as expandability and so forth. Promise makes incredible stuff.
Absolutely. Bill, and then Doug.
I was going to support OWC as well. That's who I usually go to for most of my drives these days. They've got affordable solutions. If you're doing something specific like video editing and you need absolute low latency on a back and forth system, things like the Jellyfish are highly recommended out there in the community of people who want the least latency possible for interactive editing.
Go ahead, Doug, real fast.
Yeah, I have the 45 drives, and I've owned like 5 different RAID systems, and theirs beats all of mine, hands down.
Cool. All right, next question.
George Kennedy, hey George, says, virtual centerless events. How do we as crew overcome disruption while trying to call questions between multiple venues? Go, George.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry, that was cues. So let me expand on it a little bit. So
excuse me.
I did this 5-day show a couple of days ago, and one of the biggest issues we had, my site, which I built out for our client, was just a contribution site. And it was hard to have the client on my end understand that there's latency. First, they weren't on comm, so they're looking at the latency, and they're looking at the production side on my end, but they're not looking at the final. And then we have all these folks in the room that's looking at mobile devices and laptops, but not looking at the far side. So I was put in a bad position where I was trying to defend my local crew, not necessarily defend, but trying to tie it all together from not having things explode. How do we overcome when we're dealing with other folks' clients screaming and hollering when, you know, it's actually the far side that needs to really control the end result, if it makes sense.
One of the things that we do is we try to give the clients a WebRTC, some version of a WebRTC or Skype preview that they're looking at. So we get them into the show where they're watching it at 0 latency or near 0 latency, so that they're not, you know, they can go look at the other one, but then it becomes very clear to them what's happening. You know, like when they see when they're on Skype with you, or they're on Zoom or whatever we're sending that to them at 200 milliseconds or 300 milliseconds of delay, then they open up the stream and they go, oh, why is the stream behind? And then you explain latency, and then they immediately get it, and they just start watching the WebRTC version, and they know that it's a cleaner version going out, and that's there. And that's been the easiest way we handle it. And then the other thing is comms. You know, there's, whether you're using Unity comms or whether you're using you know, an LQ box or an Eclipse, you know, those, and we're gonna experiment with letting folks play with the Eclipse that we're using, or set things up so you guys know what that's like in the not too distant future.
Let me just say follow up quickly. So trust me, I did set up these comms, and the client on my end kind of refused to get on those comms. And I asked them if she understood latency, and she said, yes, I did.
Oh, you don't ask people if they understand it.
Right.
You just tell them.
I did. And she said, well, I understand what's going on with the latency, but it was more of, they just couldn't understand and just didn't want to get on comms. So
the thing to always look at as a producer, and I'll just say this over and over and over again, is that every event is a lesson, you know, for you. And what you always want to approach that with is, what conversation did I not have that would have this be successful? Not whether the clients wanted to do it or whether they did or didn't. If they didn't do what you expected them to do, then there was a conversation that you didn't have that you could have had. And I don't always know what that is, but I look at every project where someone went, how it was a broken arrow, and there's broken arrows all over shows. When there's a broken arrow, that broken arrow is my accountability as a producer to figure out what that, how do I have a conversation? And that's why I have so many conversations. Like, I'm probably usually one of the more excruciating people to work with before a show, because I don't want to think about anything during the show. So there's an enormous amount of like weird little minutia that I'm trying to solve before then. Jason and Jeff, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, Alex, I couldn't have said it better myself. Like, if you can't beat it with training, and if you can't beat it with, okay, could I or could I not say or have not said something, then I would try to isolate a feed, give them a special feed, and put a little crawler on the bottom that just simply explains it.
Right.
That's the dumbest way to fix it.
Right. Jeff?
I actually wanted to know of other panelists that are in this world also, do you prevent your customers, the end client effectively, from texting you? That's one place I put my foot down. It's like, do not text me. I'm not going to answer a text when I'm on a site, because I'm in the middle of production. Here are the channels, and I lay it out as like, I want emails, because here's one of the reasons I want it is I want emails because I can have multiple people watch my emails if necessary, or I create an account that goes to multiple people. So everybody gets that. Where do you stand on that, Alex, when it comes to text?
I don't take text during the but I'm very apologetic about it. So I go, oh, I'm just really sorry. It's really hard for me to look at anything that's in text while I'm in the show, because I need to be able to hear it. So I don't set it up like, don't do this, but I do set it up like, it's just a limit of, I'm looking at this stuff, which is true, is that, even in this show, people will text me and they realize that I don't look down the whole show, and so that is, that's, I just try to explain it that we can't look down because we're doing the show and we need to hear them. And the first show or two, people don't do it, and then after that, and then I do have somebody that they can text. It's just not me. So that also helps. Let's go to the next question because we're running out of time. Go ahead, really fast. Now we're going to go into kind of blazing mode.
Jeff Keithley says, sorry, that's an AWS question. Sorry. Cancel
bad
that
Chris,
one.
bad Chris.
Yeah, bad Chris. Chad says, what would it? Another. Sorry. Cancel. Moving back. Sorry. Okay. Let me look. Here we go.
Whenever we go fast, we slow down.
No
Now,
kidding.
Fenwick.
Go ahead. I'll go ahead. Keep going.
Does anyone have a real world use for Medialooks stable?
Actually, Guy, I know what he's asking about. He's asking about Medialooks, which is a NDI transport over WAN. And that is it's still good. It's good. It's a good software. I use it, and we've had implementations where we use it where it's it is Windows only, or Windows or Mac. I believe it'll run on Mac now. But it is a good, stable solution for most backhaul.
Okay, next question. 15 seconds. We're just going to keep burning through them.
Martin Reutman says, is there a way to improve a video that was shot at night with an iPhone 11? It looks very pixelated.
Not really. So sorry. There's not much data there to grab onto. Next question.
Roger Harmon says, just got a used MixPre 3. How can I determine if it is a 2 and what's the difference?
Go ahead, Mickey. 15 seconds.
This is a first gen MixPre. They have these orange rings here. The second version has silver rings. What's the difference? Too much to speak in 15 seconds.
Yeah, but biggest one is 32-bit float input. The next question.
Victor says, if using a MixPre 6 Series 2 for mic, sending the audio to a BlackMagic 4K, which then sends to ATEM Mini Pro, won't the dreams on the BlackMagic camera ruin the goodness of the quality of the MixPre? There's got to be a typo there, Victor. I know you do this partly, Alex.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how to read that one out. Let's go to the next question.
Okay. Next question is from Sound Mixer Jesse in SF. Follow up on the possibilities and development of embedding Zoom into a website. I have found a deepen something WordPress plugin. From what I know, there is an issue with using mobile devices in breakout rooms. Does anyone know about solutions to these two issues?
Stumped. Where's Grant? Where's Grant when we need him in the middle of the night? What is he doing here? Yeah. So we don't know. All right, next question.
Michael Tucker says, "Hi, Alex. I wonder if you have heard of this YouTube channel, Colin Furze, especially for creating and explaining in education science format."
I have not, but I'm now going to check it out. It's please put that into the links into the chat, and we'll definitely take a look at it. Next question.
Prema says, every time I connect my 15.6 portable monitor to my MacBook Pro via HDMI, the MacBook Pro slows down. How do I fix that?
I guess the question is what year it is. So if it's slowing down, it could be, that the GPU is going, oh, I don't know how to do that. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, this is just the Retina tax. Get an SSD. If that doesn't help, lower your resolution. If that doesn't help, get a new one.
It's probably the reason it's just having a hard time driving it is probably the issue. Go ahead, next question.
Last question. Courtney says, will that 3D print model allow a port to fit the pile or maybe a lav to mount inside the mask? This is from Stuart to Courtney.
Go ahead, Courtney.
The model doesn't really accommodate it. I just modified it with a hacksaw. Just cut a little, all you have to do is cut a little slot for the pile, and the pile, I just dismounted the earpieces from the $14 pile, and I just shoved it down into that slot that I cut with a hacksaw, and then I cut a little slot on the covers to accommodate where the thing comes out, and then sealed it over with a little TPU and my 3D printing gun. So there's no real modification required, and the microphone sits comfortably in the little space. There's about a 10-millimeter gap in here that it sits in, so it doesn't rub on anything, and it's in a closed airspace, so it works pretty well. This design lends itself to modification in that way.
COVID crafts with Courtney Gooden.
And then I'm just gonna show this real quick. Let's see here.
Courtney, did you post that link of what the map, the 3D map?
Yeah, I put it in both Mercana and the chat. So scroll.
And
back.
do you guys see this?
Not quite.
No.
Not yet.
Hey, Courtney, you taking commissions?
Stupid Zoom. Anyways, go ahead, Colin, and then I'll find it again.
Oh, there's a whole page of National Institutes of Health approved 3D models of masks and shields and so on, any one of which you may be able to modify to better suit whatever microphone you've got. If you're not using a pile, whatever you've got on hand might better fit into any one of those models. Not to cast shade on Courtney's design, but there are many of them out there. I posted the link in Makana earlier. I will drop it again.
I'm gonna try this one more time just to show you the kind of the progress here, and hopefully this will actually show up now. You guys see this?
Yes, sir.
So this is the one that was generated that's to my face from Bellis 3D. So it just scans your face, and then it automatically builds this, and it attaches this to it. So this will fit on, will theoretically fit on my face. And then what I'm working on right now is basically taking this piece and building it out I'm going to be basically remodeling this and pulling this out, and then building a side piece with something that will attach to it here with a little loop that will grab onto it. So the idea there is to, use this. This did a lot of the work for me, and now all I have to do is adjust the 3D, and I'm going to be using Cinema for that. So anyway, but it did it for me. So I don't, the hard part has been done. It's just a matter of adding little bits and pieces to it. And again, the scan costs $3, on an iPhone. So it's just using the depth map to do that. All right. So now we have our we're switching gears now to AWS. There have been lots of requests. Of course, we had a great session earlier on the link. So we've discussed that in the past, but it opened up a whole, can of worms, which is the overall infrastructure of how AWS works, and folks looking at it, and is it a replacement for, or is it or something you can add on instead of Restream to have more control? How do you distribute things to it? How do you get into it? How do you get out of it? How do you pay for it? So a lot of questions have built up in our group, and so we thought we'd bring some folks on, some good friends from AWS to answer your questions. If you have questions specifically about AWS and rendering in the cloud, go ahead and start throwing them in. I'll let you guys start to introduce the process. And Matt, Shaun, James. So Matt Lile, Shaun Lile, Matt Vegas, and James Murphy are from AWS. And I will let you guys kind of kick off an introduction of how AWS works. And then we already have questions stacking up. So we'll jump into questions pretty quickly.
Works really well. Is that enough of an answer?
It works really well. Yeah, exactly. So now the big one of the questions is we talked about the link, but one of the questions that came up is, do we have to use a link? How do we get content into AWS without the link? Is one of the questions.
Yeah, so if I can answer that really quick, so we'll take pretty much any piece of software that can send out a RTMP. There's various different outputs. There are plenty under the sun, and getting into AWS means getting it over public internet typically, which means we could use something like the Media Connect service to go and give you reliable encrypted transport into the cloud. So if you think about AWS, there's a bunch of little pieces you can glue together. The nice thing about Link is it takes care of all that for you. It makes getting it to the AWS cloud very easy, but there's no reason you couldn't use something as simple as a Wirecast. You could use OBS. There's plenty of pieces of software out there if you want to do that. Hardware as well, iPhones. And then getting into the cloud, there's some services to make that, again, reliable, as well as there is another service we just came out with, the AWS Interactive Video Service, which allows you to kind of build out, if you think kind of Twitch, it's kind of a white labeling of Twitch to give you the ability to go and actually build a platform out too. So lots of options when using AWS.
So can you distinguish Media Live, Media Connect, and Media Package?
Sure. So these are, again, the pieces that kind of glue together, and I'll wave my hands about if that helps. But you got your source. To get it into AWS, you can use, again, various methods, but going over public internet if you want a reliable connection. Media Connect is that glue that's going to get you into AWS. It's going to allow you to use RTP, ZXC, different protocols, SRTs coming. And then once it's into AWS, you're going to use Media Live. That's your source that's your encoder. So it's taking the source, it's now going to make your renditions. So if we're thinking about Link, Elemental Link is generating an HEVC stream. Again, it's using technically Media Connect under the hood. You don't have to worry about it.
So that's it. So because one of the things, if you're looking at Link and look at what we talked about before, we kind of skipped over Media Connect. Is that right, Matt? We skipped over Media Connect because it's already built in.
It's just there.
And it's just there. So we part of the confusion when I first got started was, well, why am I jumping over all of that straight into Media Live? And it's because Media Connect is kind of hidden inside of the link.
Can I give a little bit of clarification there,
Sure,
James? We were talking about RTMP. RTMP is a way to get directly into Media Live that is not getting into Media Connect. Media Connect is, while it is a bridge into the cloud, it is also kind of a router in the cloud. So it was our solution to getting signal into the cloud via SRT, which is coming, like James said, ZXC, RIST, and then once you have it in the cloud without you losing a generational loss because you've gone through an encoder, Media Live in this case, you can actually route it out to anywhere in the world using the managed network. When it comes to Media Live, you can directly go into Media Live as well without using Media Connect. But if you try to send that in any direction, you will take a generational loss because you are decoding and then re-encoding the video.
So anytime it goes to Media Live, it's automatically going to do that re-encode.
Yeah.
So Media Connect, you can pass the bits to,
Correct.
Pass them out. And that's a situation where you can have one input going in, and Media Connect, you can have, 5 inputs going out, but when it's doing Media Connect, it's not doing any kind of re-encode. It's just saying everything has to be able to handle what's coming in. And then how does Media Package get into this?
So Media Package will take and basically allow you to encode once. And when I say once, I mean an ABR stack. So, encoding your 1080p rendition, your 720, all the way down, and then providing that to Media Package and being able to make decisions on the fly. So everything from what bit rates do you want to be provided? Do you want to publish via HLS or Dash or CMAF? Sorry, Alex.
So Media Package is managing the manifest.
Yeah, absolutely can. Media Live can handle that manifest as well.
Okay.
Media Package becomes very valuable if you have multiple endpoints that you want to actually deliver to. Media package gives you an origin server, it gives you DRM, it gives you a lot of capability that Media Live out of the box is kind of, encoding your video and pitching it somewhere. So if you did a dash and an HLS simultaneously, for example, in Media Live, you would be doing 2 separate encodes in the encoder. Whereas with Media Package, you're doing a single encode, sending that over to the packager, and then it's just-in-time packaging based on what your viewership is actually requesting. So let's say you put a dash output on Media Package and nobody ever requested that. Well, we would never send any bits out for that. We would only send the bits that you were actually, that your subscribers were requesting.
Got it, Matt. You were going to say something, Matt? Did I miss something?
No, but one just kind of cool thing to add is if you've built an end-to-end workflow, that's going from link to Media Live to, say, Media Package, CloudFront. Now with link, we treat the Media Live channel as this like master switch, right? So you start your channel, that actually starts link. It starts the Media Connect flow in the background. And then Media Package, you kind of just pay that as you use it. So, with Link now, you just turn one thing on in AWS, you turn one thing off, and that builds up that entire workflow and takes it down when you're done. So you're only really paying for exactly what you need.
And I think that that's a really important distinction, Alex. When asked what makes the link valuable, I think that there's a few really good use cases. I mean, you're dealing with this size of a box. You send it out to somebody and it's already connected to an AWS account. So there's no setup to do. But the big deal on that for anybody working production, if I'm sending this to an artist, they're not just going to start using it for their own workflows because an assistant, didn't ever send it back. This is locked into an AWS account, and you can absolutely be assured that it's not going to stream anywhere else within your account. The other thing that really makes this valuable is the ability to assess your bandwidth and make changes based on that. That's one of the biggest things for me is you put this into somebody's home on standard internet and all of a sudden everybody in their neighborhood gets on Netflix as everybody is right now. This device is going to compensate for that and send to
And I just love the fact that I can send it to somebody and they don't have to know anything about encoding.
Yeah, absolutely. They plug it in and
plug. There's three things to plug in. There's the power, there's the internet, there's the video, and then and then all of those little bits and pieces go out. But to get back to AWS, the big thing is that, for a lot of folks, whether they have Link or not, one of the things that we've been talking about is the ability to get it once into the cloud and then start splitting it up, sending it out to all the different outputs, whether that can be as simple as, it can be as complicated as building your own page and everything else, or your own channel, and as simple as sending it to YouTube and Facebook and, other things all at one time where you have a bit more control. And do you see a lot of people doing that as far as, splitting things up into public CDNs like YouTube and Facebook?
I mean, we certainly do. Those outlets are typically taking RTMP or RTMP-S. So you would typically go through Media Live and just publish to each one of those locations. Right. There certainly are ways to get around that. Media Package would not be your solution for that. Media Package is specific to an adaptive bitrate stack. So if you're sending to another service that's actually re-encoding that AVR stack in your behalf, then you'd want to send that directly out of Media Live.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. We got a couple questions that are starting to build up, so we're going to go ahead and jump into those. If you have questions about AWS, this is the time. We've got the experts here. So this is the time to ask about AWS. So Chris, what do we got?
Alex, can I throw in one more thing here?
Yep.
So we talked about Media Connect to get into the cloud, Media Live for the encoding, Media Package for the delivery. One item too that comes up if you don't need advanced origin is Media Store, and Media Store is kind of probably not the best naming convention we use, but you can think of it as a pass-through low latency origin. So if low latency becomes a key for what you're trying to do as your service, you'd want to use a Media Store. If you don't need the advanced origin service, it's a Media Package. A Media Package by its nature is going to introduce a little bit of latency.
When you say a little bit of latency, how much is it going to add?
Shaun, you want to quantify that?
Yeah, typically you could get glass to glass with media going through the chain to Media Package in as low as about 7 seconds. with Media Store, if you were running from a ground encoder directly into Media Store with all your AVR rendition and then out to CloudFront directly, you could be in the 3 to 4 second latency. A lot of these workflows end up being 30 to 60 seconds latency anyways because of the settings. I mean, I'm giving you the lowest GOP structure, the lowest, settings to get you the lowest latency, which you're going to compromise a little bit of your quality for too.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that I'm watching the obsession with low latency, and we have clients that are obsessed with getting low latency, and I'm not I feel like the only reason that we use low latency is because we don't know how to manage comments.
Yeah.
So the like if once you start managing comments, which is why we switched to our system, you don't care about. I mean, you care, but it's like 30 seconds is fine. And the thing is, I want to give people buffer because I want them to have a good viewing experience. I don't want them constantly having it breaking up. And the biggest part of latency is adding buffer on the player end so that they, that whatever variations they have in a consumer connection, they're going to still get a seamless experience. So we see a lot of the low latency, come up, and even at the ultra low latency on YouTube, for instance, Wi-Fi will destroy your experience.
Well, and everyone
as a viewer.
That's one of my favorite things about when we were talking Link. There isn't a Wi-Fi option, which just negates the fact that so many people take for granted the fact that Wi-Fi can only connect to so many devices within your home simultaneously. I mean, it looks like it's connected to all of them, but it's absolutely doing a round robin to get the traffic across if you got enough people on your network. But I also think there's something to be said for a low latency lean forward experience simultaneous to a lean back experience for select number of users. To your point, I'd never seen low latency hit so much traction until COVID. I mean, it's become every artist that I know wants to do an Alone Together event, which, by the way, I just tested software yesterday. I played with a person in Portland while I was in California on a low enough latency that we were able to jam.
Now, and we're having a little audio issue with you, Shaun.
That's awesome.
It's probably, I'm not sure exactly what that is either.
It doesn't sound very good.
I'm on a road link though. I can change my audio.
No.
Yeah, you need.
The other thing you can do is it does sound like if you unplug the USB of the input and replug it back in, it will probably fix itself. It will. Is it a USB connection?
No, it's a.
Oh no, there it goes. All right, so we'll come back to you, Shaun. We'll try that again. I don't know what happened. It was perfect before, and then it stopped being perfect. Next question.
Jeff Keithley wants to know, when is NDI input coming to AWS Elemental Inputs? Some of us are already in the AWS and would like to send content more directly.
So this is something that is on our roadmap of things we'd like to do, but it's not scheduled yet, meaning we're still trying to, get input like this, that it's important before we invest a bunch of time in making it happen. So fortunately, I don't have a good date right now, but I definitely appreciate the feedback. It'll help us drive this one through eventually.
We'll definitely be glad to help any way we possibly can, because this is where it's all headed.
Yeah, if maybe reach out to James, or I can send you my contact information. You guys.
Yeah,
can...
Alex, I don't know if it helps, but we create a product feature request process that Matt, as soon as we start dogpiling enough requests on, he pays attention more. So
exactly.
I'd be glad to help funnel those in and build that out.
Super. Thanks for being open, guys.
Next question.
Chad Lafarge wants to know, what would it take to get AWS to provide a VPN tool connecting our local to our EC2 instance?
So there are VPN options already available, and the best thing I suggest is maybe it's going to be beyond the scope of what we can answer here with the expertise we have. But if you do a quick look at, there's VPN connections that include site-to-site client VPNs. There are some options there on the. It's a quick search under VPN connections on AWS. Maybe that'll help.
Any other? Go ahead.
I can field things offline too if somebody needs.
Yep, no, absolutely. Next question. Oh,
Quick
no,
check.
don't hear you, Shaun.
Are we better with audio?
Talk again.
Okay, cool. I just switched to a handheld.
Your sync is off, but your audio sounds much better. So we'll keep on working on that. But it sounds fine. We can understand it. That's good.
Okay.
Next question.
Brett Ramsey says, Alex mentioned that AWS CloudFront can be used to live stream to multiple CDNs like you can in Restream.io. How would one do this, and how would this compare price-wise to Restream or similar?
Alex, can you expand on? I know we've talked about it.
I don't think
What
I
is
talked
the use
about.
case?
I don't know if I talked about CloudFront specifically. I mean, you should probably define CloudFront for everyone. I don't remember mentioning that specifically, but
sure. So CloudFront is our CDN. If you think Akamai, Fastly, there's a number of them out there. We like ours better because it's ours, and there's certain cost advantages to using ours. But CloudFront is the CDN. To Shaun's point, if your CDN is Facebook or YouTube, you wouldn't necessarily go through. You just go directly to it.
I think you go Media Live, right? To the which may have been conflated. I think I was talking to a bunch of things and it might have been conflated there. But Media Live, you can send those out. And then what's the rough cost of the going out to Facebook and YouTube? Like if you wanted to do a single stream out to those, it's not very expensive.
No, it's not. I don't remember the egress charge on that off the top of my head, unfortunately.
But it's something like $1 an hour.
Yeah,
right?
it's trivial.
You could run link into Media Live, basically a simple, almost like pass through like channel, and you're running, about $1 an hour plus or minus 10 cents, depending on what exactly you're doing.
So the thing when you're looking at those is if you look at Restream and you look at what you're paying and you look at how often you're using it, you may end up with something where, I'm only using it once a week. I'm using we see a lot of people that are using Restream once a week or twice a week, and they're doing it for 2 hours and they're paying X amount of dollars per month to do that. They may find that if they spend a little time in AWS, it could be significantly less money because they're only using it for a certain amount of time and they're only sending it out to these different outputs. I think that's the that's the advantage there. Restream does do the API calls to start the stream on the far end, which I think is a horrible idea. So the idea of having an app tell another app to start streaming live just is insane to me. So anyway, I want to see it for when I'm going to something like YouTube or Facebook. I want to see it in the preview before I push it out the gate. And it's just when you're talking about public CDNs, when you have your own CDN, you're doing your own thing and you've got ways to preview it, but not being able to preview it before you go live is, to me, just, it's like Indiana Jones and stepping out over that cliff and just hoping that there's a something there to catch your feet. So anyway, next question.
Alex, could you read this? I'm not sure what it means.
Oh, geez. Hold on.
All kinds of code words.
Is SRT to be supported as a source for AWS elementals? Go ahead, Shaun.
If you can hear me again, SRT is on a roadmap for Media Connect. So that would get you into the cloud, and then you could take it from Media Connect to Media Live. So the short answer is it is on the roadmap and coming very soon.
And for folks that are talking about SRT, we always, every time we talk about SRT, this was not probably one of the most thought out things when High Vision started working on this, is that there are two SRTs. There's an SRT that is your captioning that goes into YouTube, which has existed for a long time. And then there's SRT, which is secure, reliable transport, which is the free version of Zixi. Like that's how I look at it. It's everybody who didn't want to pay for Zixi. And so SRT is another, there's FEC, there's SRT, there's Zixi. The idea is there's some error correction that's involved to make sure that all the bits get from one side to the other. And so, and a lot of folks use that as transport over the open internet. I mean, I think that there's some folks here that can probably expand on what I'm saying if I'm not being completely accurate, but that's basically SRT. And it's been around for, I don't know, is it 4 or 5 years now? I think SRT has kind of grown up to that, and it gets better every year. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it's actually been around about 10 or 11 years. So it's quite a while. It's been long in tooth, but it's just got the most push in the last, literally in the last year. That's been the biggest push. But yeah, it's been around a while.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so it's an open sourced, or I don't know if it's open sourced, but it's a free, open sourced, but relatively free protocol that a lot of people are using to move stuff around. So anyway, next question.
Sam Lyon says, speaking of Zixi, are there any plans to unlock Elemental Link to Zixi in the future?
So I think we chatted about this a little bit before, but we use Media Connect and we use Zixi as our ARQ protocol going into Media Live. We don't really have plans.
Can you explain ARQ to folks?
Right. So yeah, with the great thing with Zixi is that it basically is monitoring every packet that is sent because it has both a Zixi feeder and a broadcaster receiver side. You can basically go, hey, we dropped a packet, and then your sender can start sending more packets basically as redundancy, or even send stuff that was lost to be reinserted. So you can ensure that you're not dropping packets. It's not just like, drop a packet, lose a bunch of frames, and now your video is macro blocking like crazy. So Zixi has this really great benefit, right?
And how would you compare Zixi to SRT?
I would just say I don't have a ton of experience with SRT, but we've worked really closely with the folks at Zixi. They actively develop just constantly on this protocol. So we have a lot of experience with it. We just know it's extremely high quality. In the future, we look at things like SRT and other protocols like this as potential options for Link. It's one of the reasons it's happening in the background and we don't talk a lot about it because, with this product, we just, what's the best protocol that's going to deliver, high quality video into the cloud. And that's the priority that that's what's most important to us, right? So, whether it's Zixi or SRT or Wrist, we could go in other directions in the future if they're, more valuable to our customers and they're doing a better job getting packets into the cloud.
And that's one of the big advantages of having both ends, right? With that, having the link out there and having something relatively inexpensive means that by owning both ends of the input and the sender and the receiver, it allows you to do a lot of things that is very difficult if you are receiving, kind of blindly receiving packets, right?
Yep. And to get back to the original question, why we don't just open up that connection to anyone, it's because we're doing pretty crazy things in the background. One thing is, Link's always monitoring your bandwidth conditions and scaling the bit rate of your encode to get the highest quality out of your network. And if that's not sending to Media Live, an awesome transcoder that can take just variable bit rate all over the place, if we don't know where it's going, we can't control and ensure that your video is, keep maintaining packets, your transcoder's not going down. And we do other things like that. In the future, we'll add audio channels, and we can only do this because we have both endpoints. And we can send things in a really specific way such that the receiving end, Media Live, can always get it. And we can just make sure that the video and the audio is all, high quality.
James, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so just to kind of dovetail on that a little bit, when we talked about Media Connect to get a reliable signal over if you're using some software platform, for instance, for your encoding, when you use Media Connect, probably one of the biggest, pushbacks on using Zixi is the price, but that is included when you use Media Connect. So just keep in mind that you're not paying for an extra Zixi license or anything like that. It's included with Media Connect.
That's great.
And so we do have customers who are like, how can I get video? How do I get the kind of like Media Connect user experience with Link? And we do have customers now that go through Media Live and then back to Media Connect, where they can basically use Zixi. They can use Zixi ZenMaster to manage all of their Zixi feeds. So we now actually have customers that are going Link to Media Live, then to Media Connect, and fanning out and managing their streams.
And there's good reason for that. Media Live is doing a lot of normalization to that signal to make sure that it's completely compliant, whereas the link can actually take advantage, like Matt was saying, to expand or contract the bit rate as necessary.
Next question.
Bill Loren says, we edit inside the VPC with some users connected using OpenVPN. Would like to upload footage from the cameras, DIT outside VPC. How do we live sync S3 storage with block storage?
So I think there's a couple questions there all in one. So there's the idea of getting content up to AWS, large chunks of it. And there's a number of options to get items in the cloud, everything from Snowball, which is a portable device that you requested, it shipped to you, FedEx, load it, ship it back encrypted. But there's also tools like AWS Data Sync, which will go and actively sync storage together, your on-prem to your cloud version. Direct Connect is another option to move content quickly up to AWS. So there's probably a dozen different ways to get content into AWS. The idea of block store to S3 syncing, I think then that's when you're talking about AWS Data Sync, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
How big is the Snowball? Like how much data does it hold?
Oh gosh, I haven't looked at the latest model. Shaun, do you know if they had, I think, like 100 terabytes or something?
That's just the coolest thing. Look at it. Just someone always asks me like, "What's the fastest way to send data to Africa?" And oftentimes I'm like, FedEx. Like
yeah,
it's still the fastest CDN in the world is just put a bunch of drives in.
And Snowball is very neat because it is a enclosed device. It's got like the Mission Impossible. Somebody cracks it open, it's going to self-destruct, and it's got all sorts of security features. A Kindle reader for the display, so that you're not putting a label on it; it's automatically updating. There's also the Snowmobile, which is a truck that shows up, and you can do the option of an armed security guard with it. So it gets pretty big and pretty cool.
And the answer to your question, James, is 50 to 80 terabytes.
Oh, thank you.
Snowball size.
I gave it a little more than I thought.
That's
amazing.
amazing.
We now have a smaller one too. So Snowcone, I think, launched about a month ago, and that's like the size of a tissue box. It's pretty cool.
This is funny. You're really into. You got the whole snow line.
Yeah,
that's great. Next question.
Funny. George Kennedy says, I love tapping into all of the AWS services and they work. What I'm finding is you need developer and API skills to tie them together for automation. Is there any advanced training to get a better understanding of tying the services together automatically and automating?
Yeah, automagically is never our intent. We typically are kind of the Lego blocks.
That was my word. That's not part of the actual question. Sorry.
I love the word, but and then the answer that I would give, if you have any code skills whatsoever, I would recommend going to GitHub and typing in AWS samples, if I could talk, which gives you a lot of really good example architectures and things that you can actually spin up very quickly by kind of going line by line and implementing. And when I joined AWS, that was actually how I spun up with a lot of my workflows.
Can I ask real quick, how is Media Convert tying to your systems? Because I've been using a lot of Media Convert lately to do some other on-demand stuff with the old player. How's it tying into the whole system?
So Media
sorry, I just wanted to go on. Shaun, let me.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to keep stepping all over you. Sorry, George. To answer just kind of add the last little bit to that, the training. There's a ton of training available, but we also have a new website on AWS where you can go and get a certified, qualified hired gun that you can hire. So we have a community now where people can go and submit, becomes a certified developer. So you can do a hired gun based off of people that we've kind of given the green light to.
And I have to say the services, the interconnection between your, I don't want to say it out loud because someone might have an open speaker, but your speaker system was cool. We were talking we had a developer that I won't call him out, but we had a developer that I was talking with James, and he just said, start the link. And and it starts the link. Like you can actually just voice control starting up your encoder or doing stuff, and it all ties back together. So that linkage like kind of popped my mind open. I didn't think about a skill, on Alex, the thing that would work with AWS. It was kind of like a, mind blown, anyway. So we'll leave that at that. Anyway, so go ahead. You were gonna say something, Shaun?
I can go back to Media Convert. So Media Convert's video on demand. The Media Live service is designed to keep up with a live transaction of video in low latency settings. Media Convert is really meant to encode your video so that you can rest it at S3 or wherever you would want to output it to. When I was studio side prior to AWS, I would use Media Convert a lot of times to create proxies of our master files that were sitting in S3, so we didn't have the DTO transfer fees. So if we had a TIFF stack for a movie, we would take the 20 frames or the minute and run that through Media Convert to bring back. But the short answer is it's going to take as much time as needed to give you the output. So you can get a little higher quality, but it's always going to be video on demand versus live.
Next question.
Kaylin says, is it possible to associate a Media Live input with a custom URL?
I mean, yes. So Media Live, well, that question's a little obscure to me.
Is that getting to CloudFront at that point? Like when you're talking about a custom URL?
That's what that's where I'm kind of going with it. Is I'm assuming what you're asking is, can I change the output to be a custom URL? And absolutely, Route 53 gives you the ability to create your own URLs. You could use other services as well, because you're just going to essentially forward that address under the hood.
Next question.
Robert Pearson says, could you provide a 10,000-foot brief overview of AWS and the biggest impact that COVID has had on your daily use?
It works, and I work 17 hours a day now.
Lucky you.
Should I zoom in a little bit more? Maybe 10,000 feet?
Yeah.
So AWS has been, Alex mentioned it earlier, low latency has become the anthem of every customer. I have a lot of friends in Los Angeles trying to do game shows and things like that, and everybody's trying to solve the alone together scenario. And that's brought a lot of things our way. So it's been COVID, while completely unfortunate, and I'd love to actually see the light of day again with friends, has certainly provided us with a lot of new interesting workflows that our engineers are now looking for even future product offerings.
That's great. Next question.
Chris says, can we get some sort of wizard or command line script to get started quickly?
To get started with, I'm assuming, media services, and that would be that GitHub link. While there is absolutely AWS CLI, there is absolutely JSON to run these events for our live encoder. Having a little bit of knowledge of what those are. So if you typed in AWS CLI and then Media Live, you would get a full list of what you can actually send the encoder. I personally like to go into the GUI, create what I want to see, and then download the JSON, and I can submit that at any time. And all of our services are API accessible. So yes is the short answer, with knowledge.
And it is one of those things that, like the elementals, AWS is kind of one of the GUI. You can get most of what you need to get done with the GUI, but where it really starts to take off is when you're actually able to start making calls with the API.
Shaun, do you want to talk about the CloudFormation template? I just put a link to it for the live streaming on AWS.
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways where you can automate. You can do this through the CLI. You can do this through the GUI. To Alex's point, the CLI is the way that you automate. You start doing Lambda functions, things like that. And one of the ways that you can automate to expand, contract, whatever you're looking to do is CloudFormation. So if you have a known architecture, or if you went to that, those GitHub repos, you'd find a lot of those actually have CloudFormation scripts. So, it'll spin up all the services that you need, which I actually prefer because if there's anything in that workflow that you don't understand, you're now reverse engineering it versus trying to figure out what you did wrong. So for me, that's a very preferred way to work if there's a reference architecture available.
Next question.
Brett Discus says, can an elemental link feed multiple channels? The goal would be to turn off some output destinations while other outputs remain active, basically 2 channels sharing an input.
So the elemental link has a single input. You could have multiple elemental links that would give you multiple inputs. I can take that question 2 ways. That would be one of them. The other would be maybe your outputs, which if you were using Media Package, you could turn things on and off, but it would still be from a singular input going through Media Live, getting packaged via Media Package, and then you could make decisions retroactively within Media Package. So I'm not sure if I answered that question.
Okay, let's talk through I got 2 links, and I want to create a primary and backup to, let's say, YouTube, a YouTube channel and a Facebook channel. How would I do that?
So you would connect the links to, you'd have the 3 cables, the power, the HDMI or SDI, and the Ethernet on both devices. You'd plug those in. Those devices become available within your console. And then you would set those up in what we call our standard pipeline. We have a single pipeline, we have a standard pipeline. By default, all of our Media Live jobs or events run as dual pipeline, taking care of redundancy. So you'd have redundancy going into the cloud, and then on your way out, you would actually publish to 2 destinations, which would be your primary and backup. So
but
that would be
can...
redundancy.
Okay,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Alex. That would be redundancy through the whole pipeline. The other option is you could run an elemental link, but you'd still have that single point of failure without the second elemental link. And then at Media Live, you could run primary and backup. I think the first option is more what you're asking.
Right. No, absolutely. All right. Nick,
Yeah, so,
go ahead. You're going to say, Matt?
Yeah, one thing, we will be improving the way that this works a lot in the next probably 2 months. So the complexity right now with 2 links into 1 channel is that I told you guys earlier, starting and stopping that channel is what starts and stops the link. Right now, we can only do a single link to a single channel, right? But in the future, we're going to make it so you basically have plural links feeding a single channel for redundant reasons. And that channel will then start and stop all of those links in the when you start and stop the channel. So this is something we're constantly improving on, and the user experience for redundant links running into a standard channel, right? That's 2 pipelines. It's going to improve significantly.
That's great. Next question.
Our own Guy Cochran says, are you seeing schools using links?
In some cases, yes, but not across the board. So the complexity with schools is, one, it's a super dynamic environment. So there's just a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. But then beyond that, there's a need beyond just video, right? There's typically either a low latency chat requirement, or they want to, have presentations and overhead projectors and a class video view. And so you get to this place where all of a sudden you need a ATEM Mini to do switching on site, and it gets just too complex as to be a good solution, like for an elementary school. I imagine we'll improve this stuff in the future, but right now we haven't seen a huge uptick for schools yet.
I'll add on to that. The one school we have seen is the exercise schools. So yoga classes, exercise classes, those kind of things, they're becoming popular there because it can be a kit that's sent out to a non-trained, so yoga person with a camera, microphone, and a link, and they're off to the races pretty quickly.
I mean, some of the stuff that we're working on or that we're talking to folks about doing is sending that link out with an ATEM Mini and a camera and being able to, fire that up. And so they don't have to think about anything, and they're not worried about necessarily about real time. sub 1 second connections. There, it can stream. They just need somebody else to do all the things. Like, just show me how to plug the thing in, and then I'm going to do what I do, and you do what you do, and it's going to end up on YouTube. So and so they don't want to know how to use Wirecast or OBS or anything else. They just want to plug the box in, and so in that case, we're then of course putting for my case, as we build these designs out, it's using Meraki just because I'm just comfortable with it. And so we take over the ATEM. I know that there's other ways to do that with smaller equipment. It's just that that one's easy to administer. So that goes out. We can control the ATEM, control the camera. Can't move the camera around, but I'm working on that. And then then the person just has to think about the good news about that is the person doesn't have to think about anything other than some nice color-coded cables. Plug the red into the red and the thing into the thing, and and then we test it, and then all they have to do is do their thing. So it's been good. Anyway, next question.
Colin says, can you provide an update on EC2 image import-export? There are various hoops one had to jump through, particularly around bootloaders when building up EC2 images using local hypervisors for development, as well as over the past few years, various documentation claiming various different processes.
Is that a good one for you guys?
Yeah, that's probably better served by.
I was going to say that's a pretty deep dive question on non-media service.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's just the one thing I need to know.
If you get a hold of us offline, we can make sure that we get you to the right person, though.
All right, thank you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Stan Chan says, is there Terraform support?
Sorry, I was taking a drink of coffee. The short answer is yes. There's a lot of services that are available, and certainly a lot of our customers do use Terraform because it's been around longer. So I'm not sure what the specific workflow, but I'd be optimistic that Terraform would be.
Yeah, I do have a customer using it with a live workflow.
Yeah, I have a lot of customers who implement via Terraform. I'm just not sure what the specific links in your chain to create your workflow are.
Next question.
James Murphy says, what are the main challenges the group here has faced getting live streaming working on AWS?
Maybe Alex, that's specific to you.
No, I think, for me, it was just, it was, as for me getting off the ground has just been understanding, as I started working with it, understanding the standard versus the single, understanding, some channel issues, how do I switch between links? How do I, those are like little, and the interface is very obscure. The switching to links is like scheduling something that you want to have scheduled for now. It's kind of like, I don't like, you just want it to say, okay, I want to switch it, and I just want a button that says switch, and not like a scheduling window that I have to use to that. Once you get through that, it's been fine. I think that getting back into those things where when I start asking about the best way to get multiple links in, and then have them going out to lots of different CDNs. I'm not really building my own CDN at the moment. I don't need CloudFront. I mostly am still going, most of my clients are still going to YouTube or Facebook or something like that. And so it's figuring out how do I do primary and backup ingests and splitting that out. And then the next thing is, as things progress, is how to, peel off languages. We had one where one of the first ones that I used the link on was actually English and Spanish. So English was coming in on the right channel or left channel, and Spanish is on the right channel, and then we take it in, and that worked out. Except at first I forgot that Elemental starts with 0 for tracks. So anyway, it was
Number started 0.
yeah. So anyway, so which I should have known because I have some elementals, and so that's a known issue. So. I think that it's just that the workflow is one of those things that it can be done in interface and software, and I think also can be done in wetware. And I think that I know you guys are working on a lot of new training to kind of make that work. I think that there's an opportunity to do more training that's related to different workflows that are very specific. Like, I want to send this to 4 YouTube channels, and then I need like a 3-minute video that shows me how to do that. So, and I think that really short for a lot of us, like really short, like 2-3 minute videos on specific workflows that are common would be, I think would help. And then again, some ironing out some of the interface stuff so that we just understand, so that the nomenclature makes sense to a non-programmer. Now go ahead, Kai.
Yeah, and then letting people know that, I have mine right here in my hand. The first challenge that I had was one that Alex helped solve, which was, hey, where is this thing going to show up? And I had to choose my Pacific or Oregon, I believe it was the closest
region.
destination. Yeah, and so that was a little confusing at first because I was like, it's plugged in, everything should be working, and then it's not popping up. And then once Alex gave me that cue, then I was like, oh my gosh.
That was like a day or two of me. Like there was a whole bunch of back and forth because when I typed in AWS, just figuring, it'll just take me to where I need to go, not understanding the regions, it was always taking me to the East Coast region for whatever reason, right? And so I just popped into it and I didn't even look at the URL. And so it didn't occur to me that it wouldn't show up in that region at all. And there was no way to get to it. And then there was a whole bunch of like, do I have the right permission? It took me down this path of, do I have the right permissions? Am I at the right admin level? And at some point, we just opened mine up completely, trying to figure out what happened to my device. And then when we got the region right, it was fine. And so I was able to save Guy some upset.
It makes you feel any better, Alex.
That'll be question one in our troubleshooting tips. I've definitely experienced the sinking feeling in my stomach.
Yeah,
20 times now. Where you're like, where is it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a different region. Go ahead, Shaun.
I was just going to say, I've run into the same thing. I've logged in for customer demo, set it up, and then realized I accidentally switched to Virginia and I'm not in Oregon anymore, and all my things are gone. So it just looks like, where is everything? And then, it's all there.
Matt, for the group, would you mind sharing kind of when you order a link, the region association, that whole thing, and what's going to come up on the roadmap for there to make that better?
Sure. Yeah. So as you probably know, AWS is basically a bunch of enormous data centers that are hosted all around the world, right? And for things like video, it's really important that your video feed is going into a local data center because it's a shorter path, less probability you lose a packet, lower latency. You want to get it into AWS cloud as fast as you can, right? So we have this concept of regions, which are basically just, that's where our data center is. So in the US, we have one in Oregon, we have one in California, there's one on the East Coast, US East, one in North Virginia, and there's several others. But anyway, so when you buy a link, you specify you're buying it using your AWS account. So the device is actually already kind of pre-paired to your account. This makes it so that when you plug it in for the first time, it knows where to phone home to, and it just automatically, to use, for lack of a better term right now, pops up in your account. It makes it really easy to set up, right? But you also specify billing information and shipping information, and what region or data center you want the device paired to, right? Because besides sending media, the way we're getting thumbnails, the way we tell the encoder to start and stop, the way we can limit its bit rate and things like that are all through these IoT messages that are sent back and forth, right? So right now, the device is tied to a data center. In the future, and I'm really excited, we actually made some huge improvements that are going to pull this in. So probably in roughly 2 months or so, we'll have the ability to move the device from one region to another region, right? So if your device is here and you get on a plane, you want to go and live stream an event in Europe, you'll be able to move that device from, say, our Oregon data center to a region in Europe, so you can get lower latency and just a better overall signal to the cloud. So that's something that's coming, within the next 2-3 months. We're really excited about it. It opens up all new types of interesting usage. You can just put link in to a mailbox, send it to a client in Europe or Asia or wherever in the world, and have the best signal to the cloud possible.
That's great. Next question.
Brett says, knowing the link is a single channel pipeline, can a channel have 2 inputs that are elemental links? If the first one fails or goes offline, what happens?
Yeah, so in the future, what we want is 2 links going into 2 inputs, then to a single standard channel, You can't do this yet, right? I described earlier how this channel now has to start and stop 2 links, and it's just, we have to write some code to get there. But what you can do now is 2 links going into 2 inputs, and then 2 single pipe channels, and then you feed those channels into media package. You have to turn on a thing in Media Live called epoch locking. That'll keep the 2 devices in sync. And then media package can actually handle that automatic failover. So if you lose one link, media package detects that, switches to the other link, and you don't lose any frames. So it's actually frame accurate.
Still from media package, you could send it to something like YouTube or to another CDN.
I believe that's right.
Yeah,
there might be some limitations.
Actually, yeah,
That's
there
what
are,
I'm asking.
because YouTube and Facebook and all of those are RTMP, and media package does not support RTMP. So no would actually be the answer on that. You'd have to be supporting your own ABR, you know, landing it in a player or a web page.
Is there any way to do it with the automatic fall over with Media Connect or with?
Yeah, I mean, you'd get into a, you know, you could certainly feed HLS back into Media Live if you did a high enough contribution. I mean, there are ways you could get around that. I do think that what Matt's talking about that's coming up short on the roadmap is the best solution. But if you had to do this today to get it out to any of those other platforms that are doing the encoding for you, Media Live is your last step before you go out the door.
Yep. Next question.
Answered. And Doug Ferguson says, is there some networking issues, port forwarding and such, in working with a corporate network to have the Elemental operate correctly?
Yeah, so the happiest path you can have in networking is to be using a DHCP network, but tons of enterprise customers and corporate networks don't do that, right? They have pretty complex firewalls that require static IP addressing, amongst other things. The nice thing is we've designed Link to be able to handle those. So just like your home router or something like that, Link has a little web GUI that's built into the device. And so you can basically access that GUI, set a static IP address, set DNS, set other kind of network settings, so that it makes nice, you know, with your corporate network. I would say the only really thing that you need to make sure is that you have port 2088 open for outbound connections. That's the only kind of odd thing that you can run into. That's what Zixi uses, right? So it just needs to be open for outbound connections.
And the what I would say is that try to work with DHCP is where it works the best, and most IT folks should be able to set that to the MAC address. You know, so you always have this. They can set basically the static on their end, and it's going to be a much better experience than having to go in and change things all the time.
Alex,
you were
can
gonna say,
I chime in for a second too?
Yep.
We have a service called SSM, Simple System Management, on the console that I would, you know, anybody who's on the call who's asking these types of questions, if you got a Raspberry Pi laying around, I would recommend setting that up. It gives you an idea of what's going on. That's where your device is actually not receiving traffic. It's actually sending out to pull the traffic back, which simplifies the whole network topology and port forwarding.
Next question.
This is sort of a follow-up. Jeff Keithley says, but do you need a port forwarded for inbound control? I think that was for a question a couple ago.
Yeah, you technically do not. I mean, I've definitely seen networks that surprise me, but I had this in a customer's network that was extremely locked down and was absolutely able to access the devices via the console, because the device is reaching out. So as long as the device can reach out, then it gets its actual input, because it's doing that as kind of a response to a web page, if you will.
Okay.
Next question.
IVS is very interesting. We are building an audience website where viewers sign in with Cognito. What are the best ideas you have seen for personalized audience interaction driven by the embedded metadata that comes through to the IVS player?
And we'll try to answer these really quickly because we're almost at the top of the hour.
Yeah, so for the interactive video service, it's fairly new. So there's interactions like polls and things like that you can go and set up to, and there's a some web pages that have a bunch of examples for IVS that I'd steer you towards to show you how to build out some of that interactivity. Chat's a coming feature, or potentially Makuna integration.
Excellent. Next question.
Kaylin Winfrey, excuse me, says, clarification on my previous question. I use RTMP to input into Media Live. I'd like to know if it's possible to point the contribution encoders to a stable custom URL. This would allow me to spin up Elemental Live inputs on demand without reconfiguring the contribution encoders.
So I would probably steer you towards something like Nginx, where you can set an EC2 instance or even ECS to come up and come down as needed, have a solid IP address there, and then essentially Nginx can repackage without doing a retranscode and send to a Media Live input. Because I think the question that you're asking is, do I really have to have an RTMP that's charging me 25 cents an hour to stay alive? And when I tear that down and set it back up, it changes. That would be how I would get around that if I were doing the workflow.
Last question.
Last question. Kevin Murphy says, we've done this one.
You're breaking up your stuff. Oh, we already
got that one. I stopped. It was a baud rate slip in here.
Okay.
I've already done this question.
Frontal lobe filter.
Yeah, sorry. My baud rate dropped to like 14.4.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think that closed a lot of gaps for us. Yeah,
pleasure, Alex. Always love working with you.
Yeah, you guys are the best.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to it. I think we're all going to go out and play some more, and might try to bring you back every once in a while and answer more questions as we dig into it, if you're okay with that.
You bet.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And also a reminder to everyone, if you didn't notice, in the Q&A system, we're now streaming audio. So you'll see a little note up in the upper left, so that if you can't get to Zoom, can't get to YouTube, you can just open up Mukana and listen to the show and still interact with the chat and listen to questions and so on and so forth. So anyway, so hope you enjoyed that, and let us know in Discord whether that worked or not. And are you guys in Discord, Matt and James and Shaun? We'll try to drag you in.
I'm not on yours, but obviously personally.
Okay, we'll try to pull you guys in so that
sounds
at
good.
least you see the stuff going by. All right. Thanks, everybody. Again, we can't do this without all of you, the attendees, the panelists. It is a group effort here. It's a kind of an odd show where we all create the show together. And so I really appreciate all of your time. And we will be back tomorrow talking about audio hijack and loopback, because I think a lot of us are trying to figure this all out. And a lot of us are using it. As a note, the live stream that goes to Mukana, I'll talk about this tomorrow, is actually coming from audio hijack. so we'll talk about how I had that wired up. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hit it, Mickey.
Great show. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Remember, it's coming in really loud, Mickey. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. We've got cameras on Wednesday, Loria on Thursday, and more education on Friday. All right. See you guys. Take it easy.